One. Yes. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Warriors Podcast. I'm really excited to welcome Malinda Norris today here. Malinda is creative empowerment coach, and we're going to talk about what will happen if you get to be, let's say, 100 times more creative, and what effect would it have on your life. So stay tuned for this wonderful episode today. But first of all, I would like to welcome Malinda to the show. And I'd like to open with your own journey. What is your own journey to creativity?
Thank you, Vivian, and hello, everyone. My own kind of journey with creativity kind of started when I was a little girl, actually. I was brought up in a household with creative people. My mother was an opera singer. She loved singing. She came from actually a creative family, too. And my father also, although he didn't do anything, and this is where I kind of learned about what creativity is that yes, he wasn't making art or he wasn't doing anything, but I know that in his childhood, he always wanted to do acting and he loved movies and he loved, plays. He loved that whole acting thing. And he was a
Hmm.
very much of a character himself. So we would sit for hours watching TV, which I still do. But we would watch these shows together and laugh and even cry. We'd have a box of Kleenex between the two of us and so into the shows. And so really I kind of saw that around me. We had art in the house. And I loved playing. It was my escape from what was going on in the household. And
Hmm.
so it really did kind of bring me to, like, when I would go out and play, I could, pretend to be things. But the one thing I really thought about was I love to dance. And that was my first form that I can really remember of self-expression. That when I
Hmm.
heard music, I couldn't wait to just get out. I'm like those kids that you see that will dance in front of everyone. That
Yeah.
was definitely me. And so,
Okay.
so I loved dancing. And then when I got into high school, I got into acting and skit clubs. And I kind of started to go that way. And I thought when I went to university that be a, I would be an actress. So I went in, for drama school and I immediately said, oh no, this is not for me. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll become a psychologist or go into therapy kind of stuff because I had my own trauma and stuff from my childhood. And so I thought, oh, I'll do this. But no, what I ended up doing was I took a year off. I traveled to Germany where my mom was living at the time. And I realized I want to do more art stuff. So I went back and I went into art school. And I have to say, that's probably when I started to really realize how much just being creative or just feeling that was a healing part for me. That was definitely healing for me. And then
Hmm.
really in my life, what I have found is that I'll get into something creative and then something will happen emotionally or trauma or some kind of thing that will throw me off my balance. And then I'll go to the other side. And I always kind of kept those two sides separate up until the last couple of years when I really realized, when I really started stepping into this creative empowerment person, that I realized, oh, this is really important to have in my life. This is a feeling of safety. This is really truly who I am. I am a creative person. And you know what? We all have that part of us. And if we can tap
Mm.
into that part of us, that will really help kind of bring us back to our soul and our purpose and why we're here. I don't know if that helps with that, but that has been my journey with
Mm.
creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you define creativity for yourself or your clients?
Yeah, I define creativity as kind of imagination, ideas, problem solving, thinking outside the box. Um, we so often, as we grow up, we start to kind of, build these beliefs, and our creative self starts to kind of shut down. And
Hmm.
so what I realize is creativity is really, it is really, having that imagination, thinking outside, self-expression, starting to really see different perspectives, because it starts with the mindset. It
Mhm.
does. It really, I believe that how we define creativity is what sets the stage for our mindset, because so often people say, if you're traditional and you've done, you've gone to art school, or you're a dancer, a writer, or a performer, those are all thought of as creative people. And then
Mhm.
all the rest, it's like, oh, I'm not creative. And in that world of the creative people, they all think I'm not creative enough. So we're
Mhm.
always
Mhm.
putting these mindsets and beliefs up around us. And
Mhm.
so it really is starting to kind of go back to those times when you were in flow and you were playing. And when we have to figure out a problem in our life, and it can be at work, it can be
Mhm.
in our businesses, it can be in our personal lives. It's really using that creative skill of thinking outside. Imagine what it could be like. What's another way we can look at this? That's
Mhm.
part of using creativity.
Mhm. So it has really wide consequences then
Mhm.
in how you solve your daily problems even.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And why I think it's important is that, so often we're split. And one of the things, as I was telling you about
Mhm.
my journey through creativity, is that I always so when I first started coaching, I was more of a burnout coach.
Mhm.
And I always kept this business side of me separate from my creative side.
Mhm.
I even have two offices. I have an office that looks much more businessy and
Right.
much more corporate, and then I have my art room, which I'm in. And I started to, through getting coached myself, I started to realize, oh, it's really important that I merge this is who I am. You know, I am a creative person. And I think how this can relate to other people, we have different parts of ourselves. And often we shut those parts down. And those parts can be, the sad and lonely, like, oh, that's the part I can't really face,
Mhm.
you know? And it's like when we can start bringing our parts together and getting really curious about that, you do start to feel much more fulfilled and whole.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important, to feel that wholeness, all the parts of us. As I say, love me, warts and all. We have all
Mhm.
kinds of parts to us.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really important information that there's the split, and of course that's in our a lot in the business world. Um, what do you see that um, how are you speak a lot about passion projects and making those come true. What do you see that what blocks those, and how are those passion projects and creativity blocks actually related?
So, what blocks passions and creativity? Actually, there's a couple things. Socialization,
Hmm.
traumatic experiences in our lives, and rejection. So, socialization is we grow up thinking that we need to be the norm. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. When I was at the university, I remember when I had come back from being in Europe, and I had decided, I claimed I'm going to be an art major. I was told by people my own age, not adults, oh, that's something I would do later on in life. I'm going to be a
Hmm.
business major, or I'm going
Hmm.
to do the, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to be in marketing, whatever it is. It's like we start these things that are told to us as we grow up. Oh, you don't do art now. Art is something you do when you've made money, or
Hmm.
art is something that you just do as a hobby, or
Hmm.
creativity is something like that, these breaking up. So that's kind of like the norms, the standards that our society kind of tells us. It's even in the schools, right? They don't emphasize um, as much creativity in art. And it's
Hmm.
not so much the actual art, it's thinking, it's being thinking outside the box,
Right.
creative thinking. And
Yeah.
so that starts to get shut down in our norm, and you need to fit into this mindset and these social norms. Next is traumatic experiences.
Hmm.
Often something that's happened in our past can truly affect us showing up for ourselves and doing something that brings us joy.
Mm,
Yeah. A lot of time, and I can tell throughout my life why I would do something and then something would happen and then I would stop doing it. I would then get back into something creative and then all of a sudden something would happen and I would turn the other, I'd turn to the right. So
right.
it's like it's really how do you morph in when those traumatic things happen? How do you see this as an avenue to actually bring comfort?
I
And
see. So it's about safety.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And then rejection. I mean, when we're kids and we bring our art home and either our mother goes, "Oh my gosh, that is so beautiful," or
Hmm.
they take it and you find that they threw it in the trash. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's like the
Hmm.
first of some of that. But then also when people start rejecting you, when you're showing up or you're dancing goofy or something and you're feeling
Hmm.
really great and then, you know, you start to get teased for it or whatever, that
Hmm.
those little bits of rejection starts to break you down because really what I have learned is it's not for you can share with other people, but it really starts with you. Does this
Yeah.
make you feel good? Yeah. And it's really getting in touch with the first step is kind of addressing what the blocks are and what are our mindsets around it. How do we even
Hmm.
define creativity within ourselves?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So you went into unblocking here as well. That firstly to get clear on what is creativity for us, and then what are some of our maybe limiting beliefs around it.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah, because we do have
Um,
many limiting beliefs around. We all. That's the work, right? That's the
hmm.
work. It's like, what is your belief,
Hmm.
and what do you desire?
Hmm.
What's the why? Where do you want to go with this? Yeah.
Hmm. What have you witnessed in people when they actually start the work? You've obviously worked with a lot of people on this, but oh, some of the things. What happens in people's lives?
Well, they start to change. Some have changed their jobs. Some have
Mhm.
started to make time, for that creative. It can be anything from baking to wanting to design their own product.
Mhm.
Someone maybe wanting to make their own T-shirts. Someone wanting to do, write a book.
Mhm.
Someone there's definitely writers out there. There are people who just want, I mean, even in a sense, being more active is a sense of self-expression, getting out there
Mhm.
and saying, I'm going to conquer, this ride, or I'm going to go out there on my bike and I'm going to do this. That is that sense of like feeling of like, I'm going to do something that feels like I'm back to where, or that feeling I had when I was a kid, when I got on my bike and I just rode my bike forever. It's
Mhm.
really, when I talk about creativity, it's not just art. It's like, it's seeing that you can break through, like, what's another way of getting that feeling that you want, of feeling like you're whole again, that you see yourself as yourself. Because so
Mhm.
often we don't feel that wholeness. We feel kind of like I'm this and I'm that and I can't show this part of me. But it's
Mhm.
really for seeing yourself. This work is really for seeing, like, getting back to feeling safe within yourself and feeling good, like, oh, look at, that's why all these um drawing, all the color books were such a big hit when they came out
Mm.
for adults,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
it brought that feeling again back to like, oh, I liked drawing, you know
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember trying it, and then I felt funny for the first time. I really felt funny. It's something that I haven't done in ages, and it's related to something that we do as kids. Or yeah, so it's funny that we give this label, and oh no, I can't do it as an adult.
Right. It's what are those moments that getting back to that felt really good to you? And really, what are new things? I mean, I know somebody, I mean, I know a lot of people with this, there are people who now that they're retiring, they're doing more creative things, right?
Mhm.
They're getting more into whether it's painting or taking sculpture
Mhm.
or writing's a big one, or gardening. I've always
Mhm.
wanted to create, not myself, but someone saying, I've always wanted to create a garden outside of my house
Mhm.
and really
Mhm.
be able to grow these vegetables because that takes love and it takes time and it takes figuring out where you're going to put it. It's
Mhm.
all problem solving. And
Mhm.
how this can
Mhm.
relate to your own business, just so you know, is that it can be like, okay, how you show up to your business, you don't have to follow a certain formula. It's really learning to get back in touch with what's your formula,
Mhm.
and let's have fun in this. And I have learned this from the coaches that I've had, it's like, how do you get back to play? I think
Mhm.
that really switched or kind of woke me up. Is like, oh, it's not work. Because for me, when I used to design fabrics, I started to really get burnout. Like I'm just felt like a machine, and there was fun anymore for me, you
I
know.
think that's often that also in the in business you can often get to that point, right? And we both run businesses. I mean, definitely in my travel business, I felt the same, and I could feel that now that I was missing this part, this creative part, this one that would go further than just the traditional, like doing it in a da 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 style, like that. Um, yeah.
It's really listening to what brings you joy. Because
Mhm.
so often we talk ourselves out of it and say, well, I really shouldn't feel this way. I
Mhm.
really should be following what social norm or what everyone else will accept,
Mhm.
and really so often what I'm coaching or what we're coaching people on, I'd have to say, is having them go back to listening to what brings them joy.
Mhm.
How are they feeling inside? It's
Mhm.
really that feeling of getting back into that empowerment and saying, oh, wait a minute, I don't like chocolate ice cream, or I don't even like chocolate. And every chocolate's such a big deal, but I don't like
Mhm.
it. I'm learning it's okay to say, no, I don't like it.
Mhm.
But first,
Mhm.
we have to start with ourselves, you
Mhm.
know? And that's the same with doing something, you know, starting to kind of know who you are and what you like, what you don't like, what you think about something. So much of social media, so much of the news tells us almost what we should like and what we shouldn't like. And that's really kind of hasn't helped the creative part of us. And I
No,
think what's really
absolutely.
interesting is during COVID is that everyone had to go back into their houses and in a
Yep.
sense back into themselves. And what happened? Things started happening crazy in the creative world, right? People
Mhm.
started
Mhm.
creating side hustles. People
Yep.
started baking sourdough bread.
Yeah.
People started doing all kinds of things because they had to be creative because there was limitations that they thought, but they had to
Mhm.
think outside the box and change the mindset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And many people struggled with it. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, it was a challenge, or it's a challenge for many of us to think creatively under those circumstances, but it's a very good challenge in one or another. I'd ask you regarding joy. You mentioned joy and things that are joyful, but how would you put that creativity, joy in the context of business?
Mm. Well, I would start really, it's like, what brings you joy in your business? Because we know that not everything brings us joy in our business, right? Doing
Mhm.
our taxes. And for some people, it's posting, you
Mhm.
know, promoting
Mhm.
themselves. That doesn't bring them joy. But it's finding, well, how can you do that in a way that brings you joy?
Mhm.
What's another way to look at it?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, this is how I often describe kind of coaching is that or how I work with people is that let's imagine we're in a room and we have the statue of Michelangelo in the middle of the room. And
Mhm.
you're on one side and I'm on one side. We see two different perspectives of the actual statue, right?
Mhm.
And so it's it's me coming over to you and helping you walk around the room and see the different perspectives,
Mhm.
the statue. And the statue is symbolic or a metaphor for the topic or for your
Mhm.
business, something that you're struggling with. And we
Mhm.
kind of look at it in a different way
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
say, okay, so you don't like doing this one thing. How can we,
Mhm.
what's another way we can look at this that may bring you joy? And a lot of
Mhm.
times it's a matter as simple as saying, you get to create your schedule the way you want to. You get to post the way you want to. You
Mhm.
don't have to follow these rules. And that's that part of thing that holds people back is thinking they have to do it someone else's way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And imagine
Amen.
could do, right? Imagine if you can
Mhm.
do it your way, however it is.
Mm.
Messy. Sometimes you go, "Oh, I'm so messy." It's like, you know what? That's just a word that that's a judgment, right? It can just,
Mhm.
what if it was really playful like we were when we were kids?
Mhm. 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 That's a huge one, definitely. And in those perspectives, then that's where the creativity is born.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And an exercise you can, this is just really small, and I learned this, and I cannot remember what his name is now, but is doing these little exercises of like, if you go into nature
Mhm.
and you look at all the different, let's say you pick green. I'm going to look
Mhm.
for green in nature. I'm going to look at all the different shades of green,
Mhm.
or I'm going to look at all the different shades of brown.
Mhm.
You are expanding your brain to look not just like it's all green. You're looking at it like it's many different shades. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing as learning when you're trying to solve a problem. The creativity is it's not just this way. It's
Mhm.
not, how about if we played with it and saw it in different ways?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's how you can, it's not just like, I can only do it this way. Well, how about well, maybe you can do it another way. And when people start
Mhm.
really looking at all the different, and it's also not just this way or that way, it's not just
Mhm.
the path to
Mhm.
split, it's many
Mhm.
different paths.
Mhm.
You
And
go,
that opens up so many possibilities and of freedom perhaps in you. And that motivation and freedom and excitement and joy, all of those things are the right signals, right? That we are in where we are using our creative powers in the right way.
yeah, it's building new neural pathways, right? It
Yeah.
really is kind of thinking because we loop. I always say, like, we keep going around the same loop and hitting the
Mhm.
same speed bump. And all we have
Mhm.
to do is kind of go off to the right a little bit.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
um, we're so tied to in that feeling of going over that bump that we don't know
Mhm.
what it would be like to be uncertain and not go over that bump again.
Mhm. 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 Of course, it's so ingrained in us, and then when we start looking at things in a new way, it's rewiring also a part of us and our identity, um, which is it's an amazing thing with amazing consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Malinda, I know you have this fun creative assessment. Um, and you have created this creative wheel of life. Would you want to tell more about it and what does it consist of?
So the creative, it kind of gives you an opportunity to see, where you are at. It's like a wheel of life that a lot of coaches use, but this is really
Hmm.
meant for your creative side and to kind of
Hmm.
see what is it that um, where can you work more on
Hmm.
self-expression, imagination, and it kind of tells you. And then when you do see it, you can pick something within that wheel that you want to work on more and then
Hmm.
start to go, okay, I want to be aware more of my imagination. And then
Hmm.
from there, start to kind of dive into what it feels like, to be more imaginative. And I
Mhm.
think it's one of the reasons. I mean, some people, yes, feel more comfortable with imagination because they've been doing it for a really long time. That was really okay to imagine. And so when you're trying to learn about what that means, I always think journaling is a really good thing to start writing about and start thinking, because it's kind of thinking outside the box, or
Mhm.
imagine new ways of um, putting liquid in. What would be a new container for liquid to be in? What would be really different? What would
Mhm.
be a new way to get to a place that's, you know, let's say to the desert? How can we get more water to the desert? That sounds kind of, well, we can just bring trucks to there, or we can create something in the sky that brings water. It's thinking outside of the box, and so imagining whatever area you want to imagine, start playing with it, because this is supposed to be fun.
Mhm.
We never want to do anything that, I mean, we don't tend to want to do things that we think about play. Actually, let me back up a little bit. Sometimes people are really afraid to have fun and to be
Yeah.
playful.
Yeah.
And so with that, we need to start like, okay, what is the definition for you of having fun and playing? And I have to say, I've been there, so I know. I thought play came last. It got so much so to the right side of me that it's like, oh, I can't do anything until I've done X, Y, and Z, you
Mhm.
know? And it's really creating that relationship again. Like, no, actually, I can have a little bit of fun before I do something that I really need to get done. We
Mhm.
were always taught, get your stuff done first and play is later. That's
Mhm.
just like the girl, and the couple people who did say to me, go and get your business degree first, and then you can have fun. So we
Mhm.
set this kind of mindset up, and it's really what people can do is start to really say, wait a minute, I can fit this in.
Mhm.
And so I know you asked, the creative wheel is kind of giving you what areas are you needing to work on when it comes to
And
feeling.
what are those five? You mentioned creativity, so imagination, self-expression. What are the three other ones?
Let me look. I'm sorry, I have to.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's, I believe I have life purpose, creative and expression, focus, inspiration, adventure, um, personal growth, passion. So those are the areas.
Yeah. And so when people take the assessment, they can figure out where they are in each one of those areas, and then
Right.
work up to igniting your creative powers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is that it helps if you want, this is really, it's like, I think people are yearning to feel some sense of, it's a way to feel some sense of safety and knowing of yourself. And I know you
Mhm.
and I had talked about this, and I do think what really kind of struck me is when I started to really get into that, I should say, back into being creative again and really honoring that part of me. It was very humbling for me to
Mhm.
see that, oh my God, one, I let that part of me, I didn't feed that baby, that part
Mhm.
of me.
Mhm.
And two, it's like, oh, this feels so much better with
Mhm.
them in my life, right? That part of me, bringing it back to me, felt so much better than keeping it in a room that was separate from everybody else.
Absolutely. I felt the same when I started singing. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I can't hear you. Oh no. Oh no, I can't hear. Can you hear me? Well, hello everyone. Well, maybe she will rejoin us. There she
Yes.
is.
So
There
here
we
we
go.
are. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yes, perfect. My headphones went out. So there was some creative problem solving.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
we have linked the creative assessment in all the channels, and um, please go and have fun and take the assessment and follow Malinda's wonderful work on creativity. But I wanted to just wrap up then with some of the steps that people could take to start going for their passion projects. Like, how do you coach people? What are the first steps?
So the first steps really is to go to really define what is it that you are looking for. What is
Mhm.
that feeling that you're looking for? We really do need to define what is that ideal feeling and what does
Mhm.
it look like. Um, so we just define that first, and then we start to look at like, well, where are you now, and then what are the blocks that are there. And so we start to go, okay, what's the first step you can do that feels like a doable step, and also learning what would accountability feel like to you, because
Mhm.
that's the other part, is that often that accountability, it's so easy to be accountable for others, but it's also what I want to have people learn, is to how to learn to be accountable for yourself. What brings you that feeling of success and accomplishment? Because really, we don't want to disempower people, that the
Yep.
only way they can complete something is by being accountable to others.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's really learning, like, how can you be accountable to yourself, like what's the why behind doing it. So we work a lot within that, and then really defining, well, what is that passion that what's that, either big project or small project.
Mhm.
It may be as small as, I just want to write a book, or I want to just be better. I want to create my own YouTube channel,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
I want to have an art show, or I want to have a baking company, or I want to create websites for people, or I want to do graphics for people. I,
Mhm.
any kind of thing that would bring joy to you. The one thing I want to point out is that we have to start first with ourselves, because the journey isn't, I mean, anybody who's an entrepreneur knows that that is just one big lesson, right, of
Yep.
learning,
Yep.
and often people stop in that, they stop, they can't go too far into, they go, this is too hard. You really do learn, like, what do you really want? What do you really want? That's why, I mean, I have changed from being a burnout coach now,
Mhm.
to a creative empowerment coach. It's
Mhm.
still the same thing. People are coming to me and they're burnt out because they've been doing something that has not been filling their soul. They haven't been
Absolutely.
really, so it's still all connected,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a little bit of what I do and how I work with someone. And yeah, you can definitely set up time with me and have a discovery call with me, and we can kind of chat about where you're at. It's free.
Okay, people, take it up. Take the take this wonderful offer. Malinda, thank you so much for being part of this wonderful discussion today, and thank you everybody for watching on YouTube, on Facebook. Where can people find you?
You can go on to melindanorriscoaching.com.
Mhm.
And you can also find me, the same thing, on Facebook, Malinda Norris Coaching. Yep.
Wonderful.
I do
We're
have a
gonna
private
post
group.
it out here.
Yeah, I have a private coaching group. So when you do kind of sign up, or you do find me on LinkedIn, you will see that I will invite you onto that group.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Malinda, for igniting our creative selves and talking and telling us showing us why creativity is so important in our lives. And I definitely got empowered, I got inspired, and we're going to talk about it a lot in Juicy Life Collective, in the community. Thank you so much for showing up here and being a guest today.
Thank you so much, Vivian, for inviting me and for being a part of this conversation. Truly, it means a lot to me, and I appreciate you as a colleague and the community too. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching the Warriors podcast, and see you soon for another episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.